And I'd just like to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our first official seminar in our new Qualitative Methods series. We're so happy that all of you could join us today. My name is Kowalski, and I am the lead for this qualitative collaborative that we will be introducing you to. And I'm presenting with some amazing members of our collaborative advisory group. So we're all going to take turns briefly introducing ourselves to you now and tell you a little bit about our background. And I will get started. So I am Christine, and I have worked for VA for 25 years now. I'm an implementation scientist and a qualitative methodologist with the Ann Arbor VA Query Center called CEAR, which is the Center for Evaluation and Implementation Resources. And some of you may already know me through my work leading the Implementation Research Group. I'm now also helping to head up this collaborative and sit on the advisory board. And now Jane's going to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today with you and my co-presenters. I'm Jane Moeckli. I'm the director of the Ethnographic Methods and Implementation Core, or EMIC, and a co-investigator with CADRE, or the Center for Access and Delivery Research and Evaluation. Also, I'm a co-investigator with the Office of Rural Health Veteran Rural Health Resource Center in Iowa City. I'm trained as a cultural geographer. I did a short stint with the human factors engineering team before joining the VA 10 years ago. So I have my 10-year anniversary this spring. Leah?
Great, thanks, Jane. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Haverhals. I am at the Denver VA and in our COIN there. And our COIN is Center of Innovation for Veteran-Centered and Value-Driven Care. And I'm a social scientist and an investigator in our COIN and primarily a qualitative methodologist. And I co-direct our Qual Core with two other colleagues in Denver. And I just in November had my 11 years at the VA, and I'm excited to be part of the Qualitative Methods Learning Collaborative Advisory Group. And thanks for attending today. And now, Gemmae.
Hi, I'm Gemmae Fix. I'm an investigator at Quire, which is co-located in Bedford and Boston, Massachusetts. My training is in anthropology. I actually did my doctoral field work in a VA hospital and had such a good experience. I wanted to stay on. I've been officially with the VA since getting my doctorate, and it's been about 13 years. And I'm also a member of the advisory group, which is how I learned about the information that we're about to share today, and was so excited. I was graciously invited to join in collaborating, and I'm looking forward to speaking to all of you. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. So in terms of the learning objectives for this session today, after this, you'll be able to gain familiarity with the Qualitative Methods Learning Collaborative, what it's about and how it came to be. We're also going to provide a brief overview of VA's HSR&D's history of qualitative methods in health services research and implementation science. And then we're going to talk about an overview of the current state of the qualitative cores that are represented in this group. And then last and very importantly, provide strategies so you can build your own qualitative cores and communities if you don't have one already. Really, it's really important to have these types of communities to support this methodology. So we are going to start out with two brief poll questions so that we can get to know you, our audience, better today. So, and Whitney's going to be doing that in the background, but the first poll question: does your department or VA have a qualitative core? And your options are yes, no, or you're unsure, you just don't know.
And that poll is open and running. Our answers are coming in. Just a reminder, please remember to hit submit after you select your choice as well, or else it will not record. And we'll just give that a few more seconds, and then I'll close out the poll and share the results. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And our results are, so our results are 45% said yes, 29% said no, and 20% said unsure, maybe.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's very useful to know. Now we're going to move on to our second poll question, which is what are your qualitative needs that you have and you can check multiple answers, as many as apply to you. So you'd like to know how to organize a qualitative core, you'd like to learn how to fund a qualitative core, you'd like to learn qualitative research methods such as data collection and analysis, or advice on publishing qualitative manuscripts. So you can go ahead and select all of those that apply to you.
All right, the poll is running and our answers are coming in rapidly. We'll just give that a few more seconds for the last few to answer, and then I'll go ahead and close the poll for you. All right, seems like things have slowed down somewhat, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And the results are 41% chose A, which is how to organize a qualitative core. 39% said B, how to fund a qualitative core. 66% said C, learning qualitative research, and 56% said advice on publishing. Back to you.
Great, thanks, Whitney. And I'm just going to say something briefly about that before I move on to the next slide. So I think that's great. You've come to the right place. We're going to provide you with some tips about, from qualitative cores that are already existing. And this seminar series is the right place to come to learn about qualitative research methods. So 66% of you responded that way. And also for this group in future sessions, we're going to tackle this advice on publishing qualitative manuscripts, because that can be kind of a handful at times. So thanks for taking the time to fill out that poll. In terms of the outline for the session today, we're going to begin by introducing this new collaborative to you, its origins and mission, and then we're going to talk about the state of qualitative methods and present results from a survey that we fielded. So we're going to talk about the scoping of a national qualitative infrastructure that we've done on this advisory group, and we're going to provide some useful comparisons across the qualitative cores, including operations and resources. And then lastly, this very important area of strategies for you to be able to build a qualitative community and expertise as we move forward. So first, like I said, I'm going to give just a very brief history of qualitative methods in health services research. So health services research grew out of medicine and economics, and qualitative research came later than that. So it's a newer field. And like those of us on the call presenting today, as you heard, we have a vast variety of backgrounds. And qualitative researchers can be trained in a variety of fields, including, these are just examples, anthropology, geography, linguistics, social sciences, and sociology. In fact, my training's in epidemiology, and I was later trained in qualitative methods in the field. So really the growth of implementation science has further increased the demand for qualitative expertise, and VA health services research and development largely follows and leads in this pattern. So I'm going to talk with you really briefly about the implementation research group, because this qualitative collaborative grew out of this platform for the IRG. So the IRG is an international group that's comprised of VA and non-VA members that's focused on advancing the field of implementation science and sharing best practices. And our membership just continues to increase every single year. We started out this group with Ann Sales running it, and initially we had maybe 30 people. We're now well over 600 members if you include the QMLC in that. So I think that increasing membership every year really points to the need for this forum. And I think largely because implementation science is a relatively new science and constantly evolving and expanding, there's really a need for this type of forum. So we host an overarching seminar that takes place every month. And then in the IRG, we have these 5 working groups that include one that's focused on adaptation, fidelity, and tailoring that's run by Borsika, Rabin, and Russ Glasgow. And then we had one on advancing implementation science that's focused more specifically on models, theories, and frameworks in which to use. And then we have the wonderful configurational comparative methods group which is a newer methodology. Edward Moeckli runs that, and it's just a fabulous group. Of course, there's the Implementation Facilitation Learning Collaborative that many of you may be familiar with, and that's led by Kathy Dollar and experts like Jeff Smith, Joanne Kirchner, Mona Ritchie, and then, of course, now we have the one that we're going to be speaking with you about today, this new Qualitative Methods Learning Collaborative. So in terms of the QMLC, how we abbreviate it, this group was established in the spring of last year, and it quickly became our largest working group. We started off with a big bolus right away. Just within the first few weeks that we sent this invitation, we had over 200 people join. And I think that rapid and enthusiastic response to the invitation to join this group, we believe really shows a national need to share qualitative methods expertise. And this group is now the largest working group in the IRG. I just want to make sure that people know too, even though this is part of the IRG, implementation science expertise in the group does vary. And in fact, we made a decision early on that you do not have to have any implementation science expertise to be part of or to learn from this group. So please keep that in mind. And then we're led by this really tremendous advisory group that's comprised of volunteers. And by the way, I should just mention, every person who volunteered was automatically included in the advisory group. So we have 28 wonderful volunteers, including all of the speakers today. Allison Hamilton, I know that many of you know her. She is also on the advisory group. And I'm just so lucky to have that group to help me facilitate this. So the plan is that these cyber seminars, like the one that you're in today, will be offered bi-monthly. And it's possible that as we move forward, we could be developing some working groups like those that I talked about in the IRG. So in terms of a mission, our mission for this new collaborative was developed in two ways. One, through an intake survey of all of the members that I'm going to speak about in just a moment, as well as guidance from our advisory group. So based on all of that input, the mission of this group is multifold. One, we want to advance qualitative methods. We want to build a community of VA and non-VA researchers. We want to conduct a needs assessment, which we've largely done, and we're going to show the results of that today. We want to learn more about and teach all of you qualitative methods and develop strategies for others interested in building their own qualitative communities and expertise. And then, of course, also we want to share best practices. So this brings us to the survey that we fielded. We're going to share the results from that. And we connect this from all the members. I just want to make a brief note. So the sample size for this data I'm going to show you now is from 200 people, whereas there are more and people join every group, so this number keeps changing. I think right now it's around 275 people in the group, but some people enrolled by emailing me directly at the beginning, and we decided that was a lot of direct email communication for me. So then we decided to enroll people through Qualtrics and collect information about members and why they wanted to join. So some of the people who enrolled via email and were sent that enrollment form after the fact then did not complete that intake survey when that was later developed. So that partially explains this difference in the number that you see. So the sample size for these results are 200. So now, in terms of a rationale for why we completed this intake survey, well, we want to know, first off, what level of expertise members already had, so we could tailor appropriate content when our advisory group is trying to determine what to present and focus on. And also, we wanted to find out, so many people joined, but when they joined, what were you all hoping to get from this group? So we can try to provide what they really need. And then, of course, we also wanted to find out where our members were located and what their affiliations are. So this slide is the first part of the survey results we're sharing. So again, the sample size is 200. This question, though, was check all that apply. We wanted to find out about the training and background of our members. And as you can see, in this collaborative, we have quite a few, 115 PhD trained members. And because this is check all that apply, some listed PhD and master's training, some have just a master's training. And then, of course, we have a few MDs and nurses that are also part of the group. And then importantly, we wanted to understand the qualitative knowledge level that members were entering the group with at baseline. So as you can see, the majority of our members have an intermediate to advanced understanding of qualitative methods already, 78%. So that's prior to any information being shared or presented to this group. And then we have a smaller proportion, about 22%, that are beginners. But we just want to make it clear that beginners to expert, it doesn't matter. Everyone is very welcome in this group. Okay, and so now we also ask people to select in more detail their qualitative expertise so we can understand the specific methodologies that they were already familiar with. And here's the data for that. Please note that this question was also check all that apply. So it's going to be way more than 100% when you add these up. But in terms of expertise in qualitative interviewing, look at that, 85%. Already. Qualitative analysis, which can be very complex, 81% have expertise in that. That kind of does point, a lot of people are looking for really advanced methods, such as rapid analysis that we actually did have Allison Hamilton present on last September. Qualitative coding, there's good expertise. Qualitative interview guide development, 77%. Code book development. And then we get down below kind of this 50% mark. Less than 50% have expertise in mixed methods, which is really thoughtful combining of qualitative and quantitative data. About 40% have rapid qualitative analysis expertise, which with all these VA initiatives and implementation science focused things, we're really being asked to churn out our results more quickly. And then in terms of formative evaluation, about 38%. And for this feedback loop, where we're going to share data with implementation sites, qualitative data, we have just about 20%. And then probably the most interesting of all the questions we fielded was this one for me. So we started this group, all these people joined, what do you want to get out of it? So 164 people out of 200 want to learn more about advanced topics in qualitative methods, which is not surprising based on the data I was just showing you. They want to be able to speak with colleagues about current analysis work and get suggestions and advice. Again, that's really important. Some of these methods are so nuanced and some of them are new. It's really just wonderful to be able to bounce those things off of a colleague and talk to them about it. So we have 110 want to share lessons learned in conducting qualitative research methods. And then look at 109, learn to publish studies using qualitative methods. I can tell you, having done this, it can be very cumbersome at times, especially if you have the case with a journal editor or reviewer that's not as experienced with qualitative methods. It can come back with things like, what is this generalizable? And it can be quite a bit of back and forth. So to have someone to talk about that issue with can really help. And that, again, is something that we're going to tackle in this collaborative. So also to understand how qualitative methods are used in the healthcare field was pretty far up there. And then to learn which qualitative methods to use and how, and to learn about qualitative methods starting at a novice. We had about 39 people saying that. Again, those were check all that apply. I can't remember if I said that initially. So, and then in terms of the makeup of the group, this group is largely VA, as you can see, 78%, but keep in mind about 25% have no VA affiliation, and everyone is welcome to join, VA and non-VA. This is an inclusive model from the implementation group that has worked extremely well over the last 5 years, so we've replicated that here. So now I'm going to turn things over to Jane, and she's going to speak with you about a scoping review of qualitative research infrastructure.
Thanks, Christine. So one of the first tasks of the QMLC was to ask members of the advisory group to participate in a scoping review of qualitative research infrastructure across sites. Representatives from each site compiled information across roughly 15 domains that were pre-specified or developed through discussion during advisory group meetings. Christine summarized the information in an Excel spreadsheet, sent it out for review and comment, and then we compared across sites. What follows is a summary of those responses. Next slide. Representatives from 11 sites contributed information about the organization of qualitative work at their sites. 9 sites are VA, those are in blue, and these included Seattle, Portland, Palo Alto, Greater LA, Salt Lake, Denver, Iowa City, Ann Arbor, and Bedford, Boston. 2 of the sites are non-VA sites, and those are in red, and that includes the Accords Group from the University of Colorado School of Medicine and the Center for Methods in Implementation and Prevention Sciences from the Yale School of Public Health in New Haven, Connecticut. Next slide. To understand the sampling context, by our informal count, sites participating in the scoping review, again blue, represent roughly half of the VAs with qualitative researchers, and those are in yellow. So please contact me by email if we can include your site, if it's missing, and we can add it to the slide. Next slide. Participating sites, again in blue, represent roughly half of VA HSR&D centers of innovation. Coins not participating in the review are green. Again, please contact me if we're missing your information. So we want to start with a global view of qualitative research organization in VA to provide some orientation and to highlight the complexity involved in talking about qualitative cores. In looking at the information provided by advisory group members, we identified 4 types of qualitative research organization. And of course, with any typology, you lose nuance. So our hope is that you can see a type here that is familiar to you, but it may not encapsulate your exact experience. So let's briefly walk through some of the meaningful comparisons among and within these organizational types. The sole investigator is characterized by an individual qualitative researcher who operates without a larger qualitative community, obtains their own funding, and serves as co-I or analyst on other projects, consults on project design for their non-qualitatively trained colleagues, and is responsible for most, if not all, administrative, budgetary, and tracking tasks associated with their qualitative effort. The multiple investigators but no core group is characterized by multiple qualitative experts who perform similar tasks as those of the sole investigator, but do so with the support of an informal community. This type lacks the formal structure and stable support a core could provide. The qualitative methods group is characterized by multiple experts who have similar responsibilities as the previous types. However, they perform these responsibilities with some supportive infrastructure, including a lead and funding to support administrative work associated with the group. The formal qualitative core is characterized by being comprised of both multiple experts who are responsible for scientific components of research and a qualitative core director or directors who are responsible for administrative components of research. The duties of the director vary across sites. Some directors hire, onboard, assign qualitative staff to projects and track effort. Others don't. Most play some role in developing budgets, providing and coordinating training, and providing consultations of project design and consult. Some qualitative cores have additional administrative staff or may delegate administrative tasks to members of the core. There is robust infrastructure in place to organize and support these activities. Finally, importantly, qualitative core leadership and activities may or may not be funded. At some sites, the work of the director has associated FTE, and at others, it's considered a service activity or volunteer work. So next, Leah will provide a more detailed look at findings from the scoping review.
Great, thank you, Jane. Yes, I'm going to share some more of the information and knowledge that we gathered from the survey results. So first of all, talking about composition of qualitative staff across those that participated in the survey. So staff can range in size from only 1 person to over 20. And what was really interesting is that who is included as part of a qualitative core compared to who takes part in a qualitative core varied by sites that responded. Some sites have only PhD qualitative investigators, whereas other sites have folks that have bachelor's, master's, and or doctorate trained staff. And then roles within qualitative cores also vary. So there can be core directors, co-directors, or a program manager. There are investigators, co-investigators, and methodologists. And then at some cores, there are team leads. And then most cores had analysts and interviewers, of course, and also implementation specialists. Some cores had a software consultant, as well as some cores had a consult group coordinator, and others had transcriptionists. And so we can go on to the next slide, please. And this was some interesting results from our survey too. So about half of sites, 45%, reported that their sites offer support for administrative work related to their qualitative cores. So 15 to 20% offered some FTE coverage. And this was really interesting to us that although FTE may be available, it is not always realistic or feasible to use that FTE as protected time due to everyone's overall project workload that might have that opportunity. And then 27% of sites reported that they had support for professional development, which was nice to see. So this included things like a speaker series or opportunities to participate in external qualitative trainings. All right, and we also asked about qualitative core meetings. So frequency in meetings varied. This could be weekly meetings to monthly, and then about 25% of sites reported that they do not have regular meetings. And again, meetings included a range of participants. So at some cores, all VA researchers were invited to participate if they wanted to. Otherwise, other cores, qualitative research staff, both in and out of the VA, were invited to participate in meetings. And then some cores, the meetings were only for qualitative core or their qualitative staff. And then the meeting content also varied. So sometimes meetings talked about administrative issues. This included coordination of the core as well as consultations that were offered. And then also professional development was often a subject of the meeting. So presentations on qualitative projects or studies were very common. And these included both presentations on studies that were in progress and then also about findings, so studies that were more wrapped up and reporting back on those. So next slide, please. Great. And so what types of professional development did we see in the survey results? So qualitative trainings were definitely very common. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more on the next slide in depth of what we heard. But we heard just briefly about methods, analysis training, lots of interviewing opportunities, learning about implementation science through these trainings, learning about theory in relation to qualitative work, use of different software, and also dissemination. And these trainings could range from occasional offerings or maybe an hour meeting session to multiple day workshops. So there is interesting variation there. And then center-wide trainings that folks wrote in about in the survey were not necessarily just exclusive to qualitative work. There were also trainings that were focused on project and teamwork. If a site had fellows, they often had fellows training. Journal clubs were also opportunities, also works in progress, presentations, and then external trainings were another example of professional development. And then next slide, please. Great. And so getting into a little more about these training topics, we thought this was really interesting data from the survey. So we grouped these into 4 different categories for you all to review today. So the first one touches on qualitative methodologies. So some of the examples that folks that participated in the survey shared included talking about site visit standards. So we do pre-COVID, lots of site visits in the VA. So this was an interesting topic folks shared. Gathering of observational data, training and about using interviewing, using grounded interview approaches and interview guide development, specific methodologies like photo voice, use of mixed methods, and then use of ethnography and ethnographic approaches were examples shared. And then the next category of training topics touched on different types of analysis that the cores that responded to the survey shared. So this included use of rapid analysis and training around that, different approaches to qualitative coding of qualitative data, and then discussions of what makes data trustworthy, and then transferability and reflexivity of data as well. And then our third category here on training touches on implementation science. So Christine really clearly laid out how the qualitative group here grew out of the IRG, and we saw that in the survey responses as well. So folks talking about training in facilitation, tracking and analyzing implementation strategies and adaptations, conducting and use of periodic reflections in their work, and then understanding and applying implementation strategies related to qualitative work, and then applying implementation science frameworks. And then finally, our last area of training of how we organize our survey results was around dissemination. So this included how to give great presentations and best practices, use of comics in disseminating qualitative work, publishing qualitative studies, use of checklists in publications such as the COREC and the SRQR, and then creating qualitative posters and visual abstracts. Great, and so we also asked about research design and instrument development and support. So really interesting here, 90% of sites reported that they provide consultations, and these could be formal and informal, and this included consultations around different researchers' grant proposals, how best to interpret their qualitative data they've gathered, technical issues they're running into, and advice on manuscripts. And then a few of the cores offered open houses to provide group consultation. And those are really well attended and drop-in nature and works really well at those cores. And then grant reviews by qual staff for qualitative work are required at 63% of the sites that filled out the survey. And this could address methodological issues, timelines of grants, and then budgetary reviews. And then also 63% of sites reported offering interview guide reviews. All right, and then this is the last slide that I will talk about today as far as administrative work. 45% of sites reported that they formally assist with hiring qualitative staff, and other sites said they had offered advice informally or by request as far as hiring staff. And then 36% of sites track qualitative effort allocated to projects. And I think I actually have a few more to do. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. Because I know I was going to talk about the equipment. So this is something those of us that do qualitative work deal with a lot as far as software and recorders. So one thing that was really interesting is that identifying approved software and equipment falls on individuals if they do not have a qualitative core in their department. So that was really interesting for us. And then 45% of sites that filled out the survey use in vivo for analytic software, and then others use Atlas, MaxQDA, and Deduce. And there's variation in use of digital video recorders, most reported using Olympus or Philips. And the DVRs are necessary equipment, but a lot of us know that security can be a persistent and consistent barrier. And then 36% of sites have limited or full transcription services at their site. And now we'll hand it back over to Jane to talk about some strengthening strategies for qualitative cores.
Thanks, Leah. So what are some strategies for developing and strengthening qualitative cores? Information compiled by the advisory group didn't directly speak to this. So strategies listed here are heavily informed by our experience in EMIC at Iowa. So during the Q&A, if people feel like typing it out, we'd love to hear from other sites about effective strategies they've used to grow their qualitative groups. And unfortunately, I picked a graphic that suggests this is a linear sequential process when it's anything but. But that said, there is kind of a flow, and early in the process, it's important to conduct a self-assessment to ask, what is the current infrastructure and capacity for qualitative work? What is the need? What value could a qualitative core provide? At Iowa City, the qualitative core provides a practice and learning community, mentoring and professional development, and coordination of qualitative effort. And this answer is likely to differ depending on your local context. Based on our experience, a lot of early work was done educating colleagues about qualitative approaches, building relationships, and cultivating buy-in with investigators and leadership. It's possible that a qualitative core could be established and supported right out of the gate, but it's often the result of growing acceptance within the organization that hinges on the development of trust, both in the approach and between colleagues. We've experienced 3 distinct waves of growth, which resulted in expanding our qualitative team. Then the differentiation of roles, first in establishing a qualitative co-investigator role, and then in adding a program manager role as part of the core leadership structure. Expansion and differentiation necessitated the formalization of our structure with, for example, the introduction of a weekly group meeting to coordinate qualitative work across projects. We're now at a stage where we're reflecting on what we've achieved and identifying growth opportunities, both areas where we can improve and places where we can collectively contribute to the field. We're being intentional about demonstrating our value. For example, showcasing our work during investigators' work in progress seminars, while at the same time we're re-engaging what our value is or could be. Whereas many of you have had the opportunity to work together across centers for many years, our analysts and co-Is have only recently partnered with researchers outside of our organization. Combined with growth of qualitative research at our academic affiliate and the pandemic, we're acutely aware of the importance of community, what communities we're part of, and what we can do to foster their development and sustainment. So this is an area that I think deserves deep qualitative investigation. Many of you have been innovators in the field, and these stories are important in shaping our future. So with that, I'll hand it off to Gemmae.
Great. Thanks. And I feel like I get to do the fun part. So I get to tell you what kind of my take and our take on these slides are. And I'll be curious in the Q&A what other folks think. So in conclusion, qualitative research in VA is maturing, but opportunities to grow exist. So the members of the Qualitative Methods Learning Collaborative have advanced training. So almost half of them have a PhD, a quarter have MPH, another quarter have master's degrees. The vast majority of members, 78, have characterized themselves as having intermediate or advanced qualitative research experience. And about half of the VA research coins have representation as part of the QMLC. So just the kind of big takeaway for me from this is a really expert body of researchers really wanting to advance their skills. So the interest in the Qualitative Methods Learning Collaborative demonstrates a substantial need in the field. This rapid growth in size indicates that there's this desire for community, which Jane was just talking about, of qualitative researchers within health services research. The members of QMLC have extensive experience, but want more advanced training and support. Mixed methodologies, rapid qualitative analysis, evaluation and implementation, some of which are currently being offered as trainings. If we can go to the next slide. So there is substantial variation, though, in the organization of qualitative research, as we just saw. So there are investigators without infrastructure and resources of a formal core, all the way to fully staffed and supported qualitative cores. And I think this brings to me a lot of questions that I think merit further investigation about the kind of quality of work that comes out of these places and different strengths or opportunities that might be there. Most sites consult on design and conduct of qualitative research. Less than half of the sites, though, support administrative work associated with the qualitative cores, but this work is extensive. So for any of you on the call, which is probably most of you that are familiar with qualitative work, there's work involved in hiring, budgeting, tracking, coordinating across projects, making sure that that people have training. Mentorship certainly is critical, consulting on other projects, reviewing grants, and then the inherent headaches of managing equipment and software, which for any of you that have tried to use a digital voice recorder in VA may be very familiar with the problems that come along with that because of security issues. And VA has an opportunity, though, to be a leader in the field. As Christine noted at the beginning, I think just the rapid growth of this particular group as part of the larger IRD. This is a large national community of experienced qualitative researchers, and notably, a quarter of the people in QMLC are non-VA folks. All right, next slide. So some considerations in moving forward. What does the qualitative community need? More advanced training opportunities, better representation of the full breadth and depth of qualitative and ethnographic approaches contributing to health services research. So as Christine noted at the beginning, who qualitative researchers are really varies. So I'm an anthropologist. I know the most about this community, and I sometimes joke that VA has one of the largest department of anthropologies in the U.S. And for those of you that have backgrounds in social sciences and PhDs, you may be acutely aware of the limited number of faculty positions in traditional social science settings, but at the same time, there's been this huge growth in qualitative need and health services research. And so you see this diversity of PhDs from a variety of disciplines. And I think also notably that because health services is such a young field, that you are starting to see health services programs training students in qualitative methods, but the early folks that started doing qualitative research, at least in VA, came from and still are from a variety of fields. And I think there's a real strength there that kind of gets glossed over as just being talked about, qualitative methods, but there are a variety of trainings and approaches to analysis. And I think you can, at least I personally, as somebody that reads a lot of health services qualitative research, there's a real maturity and depth in the types of papers that are coming out. And I think that hopefully that's just the beginning, that there's a real opportunity to really push that more. But there are some things that are needed. So more mentorship at every level, and also getting qualitative experts on editorial boards and on grant review committees, because I think it'll help grow the field and can really support some of the papers that are getting submitted in grants as they go under review. So next, I want to talk a little bit about what centers need. So more qualitative and mixed methods investigators, the need for the full array of qualitative staff, for example, mid-level coders, and then also opportunities for career advancement. And so kind of the last major point that I want to make is that a thoughtful approach to staffing that allows everyone to kind of work at the top of their license can really advance the work that's happening, and that quantitative cores could be used as a model. And so I think there's just one more or two more concluding slides with wrap up. So I saw it was asked about how to join the QMLC. This is a link which is probably hard to click on from your screen, but I believe that you'll get an email after this session that will take you to the PowerPoint, or also if you just Google the cyber seminar page on the VA's website, there's a list of all past cyber seminars, and including this one, and that link will be live. And then just a plug for future cyber seminars, the next one is scheduled April 8th from noon to 1, and we will hit on some of the topics that we talked about, and I think that's about it. I think the last slide has our contact information, and we can open it up for questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this is the time for people to go ahead and type questions into the question panel if you haven't done so. We're going to work together to field those, and I've been looking through them, and I thought we could maybe start with this one, which is, how do we protect time for QualCore administration? And this is kind of the million-dollar question when we were thinking through this information and putting this together. And so I want my co-presenters to talk about this too. But one of the ideas that we have is that we're going to take kind of a slimmed down version of the slides that we're presenting here and share them on a COIN director's call. Because I think one of the things that we're really trying to work towards is parity with other fields. For example, maybe quantitative research, which often have cores that maybe have an FTE support. And as you can see, as we were sharing this, many of the centers don't have FTE support, but even the ones that do, it's often not used because the qualitative analysts are already funded through other mechanisms. So many of us do these roles through volunteering of our time. And I think it is really important to try and work towards, being able to achieve some protected time. So I don't know if some of our other panelists want to provide a comment on that as well, and then I'll look through some of the other questions.
This is Jane. This is the big question I think that everybody's struggling with. At Iowa, we're fortunate to have had for a long time money dedicated, FTE dedicated through center admin funds to help support a small percentage of the effort that's part of administering the core. We also are funded through multiple centers, so we have a little bit more flexibility. So for instance, I'm supported both through Cadre and through some funds from the Veterans Rural Health Resource Center because of all the work that I do overseeing staff and projects and working with project leads to develop their qualitative components of their projects through the Office of Rural Health. I know for some people in our team, we're able, so for instance, our program manager does a lot of data management across projects. Now that data management is assigned a small amount of effort, a very small amount of effort across many projects. Her project management tasks are not. So I don't know if there's an opportunity for places that don't have the ability to have a center funds allocated, if it's possible to build in qualitative management as part of, at a very small percentage, like 3% across many projects, to help fund some of the effort that's involved. That's one idea. I don't know how feasible it is at different localities.
Thanks, Jane. I didn't know if Leah or Gemmae wanted to comment on that. If so, let me know. But we have several other questions. So this is kind of related to what we were just talking about. This one is the core designation formal or informal, funded with center funds? So yes, this is another great question. And sometimes it is formal and sometimes it is informal. And this is kind of the slide, if I can go back to where we were talking about the differences between the types. Here it is. So sometimes there are, places with sole investigators where they really don't have a funded core. And then sometimes, I'm trying to think back, and maybe my co-presenters can comment on this too, about how our qualitative core in the Ann Arbor VA came to fruition. And I don't think it really was like a formal edict of sorts. I think it was more just something that rose up from the qualitative people in our team working together. And that said, now it is very formal, and we have set meetings every month. We host trainings. We have open houses where people can come in and ask us questions about anything really related to their qualitative work, touching on some of the things that we already mentioned in the slides, like reviewing a grant proposal, making sure, sometimes if you haven't done qualitative work before, it's useful to have that brief review from people who've done this work a lot. So when someone comes in and tells us their plan is to do 200 interviews, we can kind of scale that back a little bit to something more reasonable. I don't know if other presenters have comments they want to share on that. Okay, then another question I see is, doesn't HSR&D recommend only 2 digital voice recorders that can be used? And I think this is a great question, because this is something I will say at my VA, we were told that there was only one type of digital voice recorder that was approved. So it was really interesting to find out that across VA, there are, several different types of digital voice recorders being used. And we touched on this in the slides, that this can definitely be a barrier. We know some of you right now are going through some pretty tough barriers with this. And we do have a person, if you want, I'm trying to think the best way. You have our email addresses. Another good way to email might be using irg@va.gov, because it goes to a few different people, not just me. But we do have a person that's collecting data right now to be taken to a high-level discussion in terms of digital voice recorders. There's some VAs that currently are being told there's none that meet the data security and privacy requirements. And so that is difficult, and it's put a stop in some places to qualitative interviewing altogether. So as part of this collaborative, we're trying to help address that. So if you do join the collaborative, I send out a newsletter every month, and I add some information in there that I can be sure to include next month as well, that has a contact name for who to write up your experiences with that. But that is something that, I know is a message that some people are receiving. Do my other presenters see questions they want to answer? I'll try and scroll through, but if you want to talk about one in the meantime while I'm looking, that would be great.
Sure, this is Leah. I'm looking at the question that Kimberly Brown put in. Would you talk about credentialing? I have PIs who have little more than a single course in a semester who believe they can design and manage significant qualitative work. This is distressing. And that does sound distressing. And I think it depends. I'm not sure if you have a qual core at your center or not. It sounds like for Christine's example, they have that open house and they've been able to curb some of those issues by making a real safe space for people to come in and understand that because, they took one course in their graduate work, they probably need a little bit more guidance and practical work in designing a study. I'm in Denver, and we have a good setup where we really encourage folks to come workshop ideas or reach out and meet with us one-on-one. But then it does go back and is tied into logistics because in our model, it's a service model, so there is no protected time. But I think trying to encourage a culture that stresses that some expertise from someone to help guide their study will be more valuable to them in the long run. And does anyone else want to add anything on this one? Any of my other co-presenters?
This is Gemmae. I'll just add quickly, I think that many of the comments that you raised, Leah, are good ones just about kind of building that community. But I also think that as qualitative expertise is growing, that as papers go under review, as grants go under review, I think that panels are getting more savvy about understanding qualitative methods. And I'll also say that, they might just have to learn the hard way of you get what you pay for. And I don't know. I guess I've kind of struggled with this myself. I think it's a great question, and I think somebody else was going to answer as well.
Okay, well, I'll touch on another question. So someone asked us to expand a little bit more about how we're working with non-VA centers. And so if we go back to the slide that Jane presented, kind of showing the stars of where people were from, there were two qualitative cores, one from Yale and one from Denver Accords that are included. Again, that's just based on volunteering. Anyone is welcome. So I think what happened, I have a pretty large, listserv at this point, and people know me in implementation research. And so I think people just sent my information about this to their colleagues who were not affiliated with the VA. And we really just encourage people to do that. The more the merrier, and we're happy to work with everyone. So I guess the brief answer to that is, non-VA staff and cores and centers and those who join these seminars and those that have interest are welcome. You can just click on that link to join the initiative and just let your colleagues at other centers know about it. And we're very happy to work with them. We're very interested in finding out, how their qualitative centers work and how they may be different from those in VA. I think we have about 5 minutes left. I think we can do a few more questions. This one says, what possibilities are there for the QMLC to use its structure for some reason the tail end of this question is getting cut off for me. I don't know if anybody else, my other presenters. Whitney, I don't know if there's a way to expand these questions and make them a little bit easier for me to see, because some of them, when they're long, the tail end of the questions are getting cut off.
I can read it if you want to. I'm having trouble as well sometimes. It's not a very user-friendly system. It's what possibilities are there for QMLC to use its structure to provide VA or field-wide shelter with time, funds, administration, collegial support for qualitative researchers at all levels who aren't affiliated with the center due to coin defunding focus. So.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Gemmae. So others can comment on that too. And I think, obviously we're not going to be we don't have the magical answer of being able to give funding, because we are all kind of just volunteering our time essentially too, but it is a great place to come for support and to talk about these issues. So I encourage you to come and join these sessions, and people can start little email groups and talk to each other, and maybe we can help you to find people that might be even at your VA who are like-minded, that you could work together. People have already also asked about the slides. I believe, Whitney, that they'll get a link within a couple of days. You'll get a copy of these slides. So you could share them with some of your local leadership and see if that helps. Leah, Jane, Gemmae, do you have other comments on that?
I think that the QMLC, this is Jane, will provide a network for people along the lines of what Christine was talking about. And there are some questions in here about employment opportunities, or how do you find work in the field. Of course, there's usajobs.gov, but oftentimes positions are direct appointed, or if they are advertised outside of usajobs.gov. So I think these types of networks are excellent sources for hearing about those opportunities. And I know that through other platforms we circulate when there's funds available, extra funding available when we need an extra set of hands across centers, or if we're hiring. So I don't know, Christine, if this would be a good platform or not, but this network of people, I think, are the right people to be in conversation with.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
And also, I'll just add, while you look at the next questions, plug for CIDR, who is hosting this cyber seminar, but they also have VA jobs listed on their website, and they send out through their emails. They're not qualitative specific, but there are qualitative jobs within there.
Great, and maybe we just have time for one more question. So I apologize, there are many more that it looks like we're not going to have time to get to, but this one is, are there any trainings in particular that you recommend for those new to qualitative methods? So one, I would say, join our collaborative. We'll be providing sessions, but also maybe look at the Qualris report. It's QUALRIS. I think Allison Hamilton and others help to author that, and it's just a really, really nice kind of introductory summary about qualitative research and ways to integrate rigor in that. Also, you might just want to do a search through the cyber seminars that have been presented in the past on qualitative methods, because I know we have a few people that try to do some periodically, and I think that that would be a good resource as well. But I know we're at the top of the hour, so Whitney, should I turn it back to you?
Yes, thank you, Christine. Before we go, do you guys have any closing comments for our audience before I end the webinar?
This is Gemmae. I just want to say maybe two quick things. I would like to thank my co-panelists for a great presentation, and there's a lot of really fantastic questions in the Q&A. We are going to hold on to those and feed those back into future presentations.
Yep, excellent. Yeah, just to say thank you so much to all of you for joining. We really, really appreciate the interest. Qualitative methods are exciting to us, and we're so happy that you have interest in this group. Feel free to join the collaborative in our future sessions, and we'd love to hear from you, even more in terms of other information that you'd like to see us work on as we move forward with this collaborative.